Yo, 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 what's happening? Maryland, everybody. So, as I stated before, we're about to get started with this podcast presentation. I'm going to do a little live. I got a whole presentation set up for you on opportunities in podcasting and how you can get started. For those of y'all who don't know me, I am Jalen. I am 1/4 of the Black Earth Renaissance. I'm an author. I have a bachelor's in marketing, business administration and marketing. I'm a branding expert, co-founder of Black Earth Renaissance, co-host of the BWR Podcast, and I'm a full-time entrepreneur. You can follow me on Instagram at iTranscendYou, and you can follow me on Twitter at HefeClap. Our podcast, we've reached number 26 on the top business podcast for Apple Business Podcasts in the world, not just in America. Top 26 in the world. We've had over 1 million downloads. We surpassed 1 million downloads. We're over 100 episodes in, and we've been doing this for 2 years. So I do have credibility and I have knowledge in this industry. Like I said, we've been doing this for 2 years, and we've really just been trying to kill it, providing value. What we're going to be talking about in today's live: what is a podcast, why you should start a podcast, opportunities in podcasting, pros and cons of podcasting, and how you can get started. Once again, make sure y'all share with your family and friends. We are about to turn up. We about to get ready. We are about to get ready to go all the way in. And I'm not going to lie to y'all, I'm not saving this live. So you get it where you get it. I'm sorry if you can't stay, but this is just going to be something that we're doing just for y'all who's here. Yeah, let me do this. One moment. I am going to be telling y'all about this. This is going to be a free webinar. I do have a course that I'll tell y'all about at the end. I'm not going to lie to y'all. This is a course that we put together. Once again, like I said, this is from credible knowledge. We've been in this industry for 2 years. We've made money off our podcast, built a very, very large and successful podcast. So I'm not just doing this just to, willy-nilly reading this out of a book. Sorry, y'all, I had to type that. So, like I said, we're about to get started. Oh, shit. How do I get back to the pictures? Oh, I see. Okay. So, first we're going to go over what is a podcast, right? What is a podcast? A lot of people might think that they have an idea of what a podcast is. A lot of people think that, having a YouTube live or just going live on Instagram at a certain set date and a set time is a podcast. Unfortunately, that is not a podcast. That is a live or whatever type of show on whatever platform you have. Until you actually have your audio hosted onto a podcasting platform, you do not have a podcast. And here are the reasons why it's not a podcast. Because in order to have a podcast, one, it needs to be hosted onto a site. It needs to be hosted onto a podcasting hosting site. Then, after you have that site, you'll have what's called an RSS code. RSS code. And RSS code stands for really simple syndication. And that's how you're able to spread and get your podcast across to everyone on the internet. Podcasts live on the internet. It's a collection of audio files that live on the internet. You can download them to mobile devices or computers. So mobile devices such as an iPhone, iPads, any type of tablet, anything like that, you can download it to a mobile device or a computer, and it can be listened without having access to the internet once it's downloaded. So that's what an actual podcast is. Unless it's hosted on a website via the internet, where it lives and people can actually go back and listen to it whenever they want to and download it, it's not a podcast. Sorry to tell anyone who has a show and think that, I've been doing this for a year now. No, you just got an Instagram live or you just got a YouTube live. I'm sorry to tell you that. But you can fix that. You can take all of that audio and you can convert it into a podcast, and we can get you started with that. Next, we'll go into why should you start a podcast. So why should you start a podcast? A lot of people, they might think, I need to start a podcast. I need to get this done. But let's talk about it. So let's discuss why you should start a podcast. So the very first section is podcasting can help boost your business and brand recognition. So if you're a fresh entrepreneur, you're just getting started, or even if you're a seasoned entrepreneur / business, even if you're a seasoned entrepreneur / business owner, having a podcast is a great way to get brand recognition and to get people aware of what's going on in your product. It's a great way to get people aware of your brand and your product. And I'll go into some numbers later, but that's one of the reasons why you should start a podcast. If you own a business or you're an entrepreneur and you would like to get brand recognition and get more information about what you're doing out, you should start a podcast. Another reason why you should start a podcast is podcasting can be a great networking tool. Podcasting can be a great networking tool. So what I mean by this is, if you're doing a podcast where you're interviewing someone, it's a great networking tool for you to start talking to industry experts and industry leaders by having a podcast. A lot of people don't mind coming on a podcast because they know the audience that's attached to podcasting. A lot of people, especially in their field of area of expertise, they're going to want to talk about what they're doing anyway. So now you're giving them an outlet to new people for them to talk to. The next reason why you should start a podcast is it's a very personalized form and very personal and intimate form of content, right? Most people that listen to a podcast, they listen to it all the way through. I was just looking at our numbers. We got a podcast episode that's like 2 hours long, and we got like 14,000 people listen to this one episode, right? 2 hours long, 14,000 people listen to it. 50% of those 14,000 people, which is 7,000 people, listen to that podcast all the way through. We have 472,000 followers on Instagram right now, but only a fraction, not even a full 10% of those followers get to see what we post every day due to the algorithm. So with a podcast, it's very personalized, a very intimate form of content. People are tuned in and engaged to this form of content for an extremely long amount of time. So that's another reason why you should be thinking about a podcast. If you are a content creator, if you really like to make content, having a podcast is another great tool to add to your warehouse, to add to your tool belt. Let's go. Any questions on why you should start a podcast? Any questions on why you should start a podcast? I ain't gonna lie, I got some green beer too. Happy St. Patrick's Day. If y'all like St. Patrick's, it's just green because it was at the office. If we don't have no questions, we are moving on. So next we're going to get into the pros and cons of podcasting. What are the pros and cons of podcasting? I'm going to give it to you real raw. I don't want you to get into this game and just think, everything is going to be easy. Jalen told me to start a podcast and this is just going to be fairy tales and flowers. Like, it's not, unfortunately. So we'll start off with the pros first, right? Pros. Having a podcast allows you to establish yourself as an industry leader and resource. So once again, like I said, if you have a business or a brand and you would like to get more recognition around your product, having a podcast, you're able to establish yourself as an industry leader and an industry resource in whatever industry you're in, because now you have an audience that's tapped in and listening to a specific topic that you're talking about, a specific point that you're talking about, and they're coming in, week week out. So now that you've amassed the listenership of 1,000 to 2,000, however many people that you amass a listenership to, now you're able to establish yourself That's only if you're giving away good content, good actionable content that's actually changing lives. You'll be able to establish yourself as an industry leader or industry resource. Once again, podcasting can become a very powerful asset. Podcasting can give you an extreme amount of leverage, And the reason why I'm saying this is because, once again, like I said before, whenever you're starting your podcast, right, people want to talk about what they're experts in. People want to talk about whatever you got. So now you're able to start making money off of your podcast. You're able to start connecting with some of these people who are really, really plugged in. So now you can even start getting larger guests, people that you normally wouldn't have access to, because now you've built up a large community. You've built up people that's actually enjoying what you're talking about, right? So having that podcast can become a very powerful asset. Another pro of podcasting, the content can be evergreen. And what do I mean by evergreen content? Evergreen content is content that will be relevant for the end of time. It's content that will stick around for 10, 12, 20 years, however many years in the future. It's because it's relevant to human society in our everyday lives. It's content that people, don't matter how old you are, you can pick up on this, and people will go back and listen to this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So if you have the right type of topics, and categories, you can score and get you evergreen content. So now you're able to build you an automatic lead magnet, a lead magnet that'll be generating leads for years to come. And then also, the content is so easy to be consumed, right? Podcast content, you don't have to be on your phone. Well, you can listen to it on your phone, but you don't have to pay attention to your phone to consume the content. You don't have to actually be looking at your phone, be actually physically engaged with your phone while consuming the content, unlike Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, things like that. I wouldn't say YouTube, because you can walk away from YouTube. But social media apps like that, you don't have to actually physically be on your phone scrolling down it just to actually consume the content. The content is so easy to be consumed. There's people that listen to the content on their way to work every morning. People listening to it in the gym. You got people that listen to your content while they're home. Let's say you have a cooking podcast. You can actually talk through the recipes and talk through what you're doing while they're hands free. They got their hands free, and they can listen to all of your directions while they're cooking. So now they don't actually have to pay attention to the screen. They can pay attention to the work that they're doing. So the content is extremely easy to be consumed. Those are the pros of podcasting. Do we have any questions regarding the pros of podcasting before we get into the cons? No, hold on. I don't think I was about to say I don't think I downloaded the cons. So moving on, we're going to get into the cons. So cons of podcasting, right? Just starting a podcast does not mean that you will gain listenership automatically. Just starting a podcast is the same thing with social media. Everybody starts with 0 listeners. Everybody starts with 0 followers. So that does not mean that, hey, I just launched my podcast, I'm about to get 500, I'm about to get 1,000 listeners just because I started this podcast. That's not the way it goes. Unfortunately, sometimes there are unicorns where you drop a podcast and it just takes off because maybe it's a strong name associated with it. Maybe it's something that you hit the SEO just right and your podcast started picking up traction. But 9 times out of 10, just starting a podcast does not mean that you will gain listenership. Sometimes you actually got to put the work in. And putting the work in, that goes to the second point. Being consistent is hella hard, y'all. Like, being consistent is hella hard. Whenever you start a podcast, you got to understand that a lot of people, like I said previously, people want to start listening to this podcast on their way to work, while they're in the gym, while they're doing certain things. So now you're ingrained into their daily routines. You're ingrained into their life. And now people are actually expecting you to give them this podcast week in, week out, or however often you decide to release. they'll be expecting you to be releasing that podcast on a consistent basis. And being consistent can be hard, especially with podcasting. Because like I said, the first kind, just because you start a podcast does not mean that you'll gain listenerships. Sometimes people will start a podcast, the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, everything is great. It's just like a relationship. It's the cupcake phase, the honeymoon phase. Everything's great. I love podcasting. I love editing this. I love putting it up. And then a month in or a month and a half in, their listenership starts to come to a plateau. Now they're only getting 100 listeners, and it's like, man, I don't even feel like doing this right now. I got other things I can be doing on the weekend besides recording this podcast. Or I had to stay at work late and I forgot to edit my podcast. Now my show is going to be late. It might be a week or two late. So being consistent is hard when podcasting. It's a lot of things that go into podcasting that is not seen on the background. On the back end of things, there's a lot of things that go into podcasting. Another kind of podcasting is getting reviews is hard. It's not like Instagram where you can just post something, you get a lot of likes, you get comments and stuff. Getting reviews is hard for podcasting because, once again, like I said, a lot of times people aren't actually on their phone when podcasting. People have the phone put down. People are doing other things while they're podcasting. So getting those reviews could be hard sometimes whenever someone's away from the phone, and then it just goes into another podcast. So you have to do certain things to get reviews. You have to do certain things in order to really connect with your audience, connect with your listenership, and build a community around your podcast. So those people feel like, this podcast gave me so much value. This podcast done this for my life. You know what? I gotta give them a review. I gotta let everybody know what this podcast is hitting on. Another thing about podcasting, another kind about podcasting is the analytics are trash. When I tell y'all the analytics are trash, it's not like Instagram where I can know, this person clicked this link and this how many people viewed this how many people viewed that. You don't get all of those things. The most you get with podcasting is, I have 50% men, 50% women. You might get where they're from, like your top states where your podcast is being listened to. So you might get the states and your demographics, but as far as getting like really, really in-depth analytics around your podcast, podcasting analytics is not the best. However, there are companies that's working on that. They're working on changing and making the podcasting experience better for everyone. But at this current point in time, podcasting analytics are trash. Another kind about podcasting is social media sometimes isn't the best tool for growing your podcast, right? Social media isn't the best tool for growing your podcast. Once again, the reasoning being because people that's listening to podcasts, they're not on social media while looking for new podcasts, right? They're not on social media while listening to podcasts. They're probably doing something else. They're probably working out or doing whatever they're doing while listening to podcasts. So whenever they get on social media, they probably want to get on social media to see something funny, to see something else. They're not looking for that type of content on social media. So it's a little bit difficult to convert listeners to convert followers to listeners on social media. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it is difficult. Do we have any questions on the cons? Do we have any questions regarding the cons? I see someone said, how do you decide what content is relevant enough to attract listeners? Honestly, whenever you want to figure out content, you got to figure out what's something that resonates with you, and you got to figure out who am I going to be speaking to? Who is the crowd that I'm going to be targeting? What is something that I have enough ammunition, enough content to speak about this for an extended period of time? Am I only going to be able to speak about this for 5 minutes? And there's nothing wrong with a 5-minute podcast. There's nothing wrong with a 10-minute podcast. One of my favorite podcasts, the Wall Street Journal, they do a 10-minute excerpt, a 10-minute podcast excerpt every morning. Every morning, every afternoon they do a news podcast. And it's just 10 minutes, but it's short, sweet, to the point. But you just got to make sure that you're able to put out enough content to where you can stay relevant, to where you can stay on top of what you're doing. Okay. How do we tap into that aspect? Let's see. What's the best way to grow listeners with podcasts? The best way to grow listeners with podcasts, honestly, get on other people's podcasts. Get on people that's in your industry. Do a cross episode where they get on your show, you get on their show, and then you can start telling people about your podcast. Because once again, you want to meet your listeners where they're at. Guess where they're at? They're listening to other people's podcasts. They're listening to other shows. So you want to meet them where they're at. What's the best way to make yourself searchable? Become a dog at SEO. Become a dog at search engine optimization. Where would you suggest build that community? You build that community around having great content, around understanding who's your listenership. You build that great community by knowing exactly who you're talking to, who your podcast is for, what voice that you're resonating with. So, we're going to move on to the next section, right? The next section is opportunities in podcasting. Opportunities in podcasting. And I want y'all to please stay on this live for as long as you can, because I got something great, something really special for y'all at the end. If you're tapped in right now, if you're getting some good information from this, please drop some gems. Do the hearts for me. Let me know that this is valuable. I want to make sure that this information is resonating with you. I want to make sure that this is something that's actionable, something that you can put your steps into. Make sure you drop some gems, drop the hearts, share this with your friends, family, everything. Let's get into the next section. Opportunities in podcasting. Opportunities in podcasting. Let's see. So bow. The very first opportunity we're going to talk about is growth and opportunities, right? Podcasting is still a very young industry. A lot of people think that podcasting is becoming saturated. A lot of people think that podcasting, I see everybody and their mama making a podcast. It's not true. That's very false. It is starting to pick up, but it's still not as saturated as you think it is. And the reason why I'm going to tell you this is, think about how many people you see starting YouTube channels to this day. How many people you still see making YouTube channels. Y'all, go follow, go support my new YouTube channel. Let me tell you this. For every podcast, for every one podcast, there is 65 YouTube channels. For every one podcast, there is 65 YouTube channels. Right? Right. Podcasting is still very young. Podcasting was invented in 2006. We are now almost 20 years in. About 3 years short of 20. Not 3. I'm sorry. About 5 years short of 20. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was started in 2006, around 2005. Only 24% of the U.S. population. The U.S. population is 360 million people. 24% of those 360 million people listen to podcasts on a weekly. The room for growth, that's about 60 million people listening to podcasting weekly. The room for growth that it's targeted is crazy. It's ridiculous. Podcasting has been growing at like 100% rate year over year over the past 6 years. Over the past 6 years. 75% of the U.S. population has heard of the term podcasting. So we're gonna do a little bit of math, right? There's 75% of people they've heard of it. They've heard of the term podcasting, but they've never tapped into it yet. So you have people that are considered early adopters, people who get into the movement very early before everyone else. Then you got those people who come in with the masses, right? You got whenever everybody's talking about it. Everybody's on this podcast. Everybody's listening to it. That's whenever you're going to see maybe around 100 to 110,000 100 to 110 million people listening to podcasting. Then you're going to have your laggers, your people that's late to the party, that's coming in, people that's showing up late to the show. So you have a whole bunch of room for growth in there. And the room for growth in 2023, the expected listenership in the United States, that's just in the United States, it's not global, is 160 million people. It's expected to be 160 million people. That's almost doubling what's going on right now. Really almost tripling what's going on right now. Almost tripling how many people are listening to it right now. So the room for growth in podcasting is astronomical. It's astronomical. And then I also want you to think about some things. There's still people who don't have access to high-speed internet. There's still some people that don't even have access to Wi-Fi. Just in the States. There's some rural areas that don't have access to a lot of these to a lot of the technological advances that's going on right now. Now that's on the United States. Let's take this to a global approach. Guess how many countries still don't have access to the internet? Guess how many countries still aren't tapped in to the internet? That's 7 billion people that you have the opportunity to actually start tapping in with. 7 billion people. Now we're going to move on to money in the industry. Money in the industry. In the year 2021, this year 2021, podcasting is expected to reach $1 billion in revenue. $1 billion. This industry is going to become $1 billion industry this year. And there's no reason why I don't see it actually exceeding $1 billion this year. Because the amount of money that's been going into the industry year over year has been astronomical. There's been new advertisers. There's been like 160 new advertisers every week getting on Podcast Marketplace just to start getting their brands and their businesses out on podcasting because they see the potential and the growth and the power that's in podcasting. Money in the industry. Let's talk about a big player in the industry, right? Let's talk about a big player. Spotify spent 800 million, almost a B on podcasting between 2019 and 2020. $800 million. Why would a company like Spotify invest almost $1 billion into an industry and a market if they knew they weren't going to recoup that money 2 to 3, 4 times X, right? Between that, podcasts, they purchased some major players. Podcasts purchased Anchor. Anchor is a hosting site. Podcasts also purchased Gimlet Media. Gimlet Media is another, they were a powerhouse in podcasting. They purchased Gimlet Media. Podcasts that also purchased, they did an exclusive deal with Joe Rogan for $100 million for his podcast to be exclusively hosted on Spotify. You can't listen to nowhere else but Spotify. So why would they invest in some of these type of assets if they didn't understand how much money they're going to make in the long run? Think about that. You want to think about where the big money is putting their money at. Google, another major player, said they're investing $500 million into podcasting over around that same amount of time. You got Amazon. Amazon's starting to come out. They just announced late last year that Audible is starting to offer exclusive podcasting content, and they're actually in talks with Wondery, one of the last big giant podcasting media companies in the industry, independent. They're in talks of buying them. They're in talks of buying them right now. 60% of podcast listeners have purchased a product or service because they heard it on a podcast. 60% of podcast listeners have purchased a product or enrolled into a service because they heard it on a podcast, right? Right? That's crazy. You don't see those type of conversion rates anywhere. You don't see those type of conversion rates on social media. You don't see those type of conversion rates on email. You don't see those type of conversion rates in any other form of content. So that's why people are piling into podcasting right now, is because of the conversion rates. That's why these advertisers are throwing the bread at the podcasting market, is because of the conversion rates. And like I stated before, people are tapped in, people are engaged for an hour, 2 hours while listening to an episode of a podcast. People are engaged, focused, they're engaged, like just tapped in. Ways that you can make money in podcasting, right? You can secure podcasting sponsorships, and you secure podcasting sponsorships through what's called CPC, the CPC model. CPM model, cost per milli. So you would link up with an advertiser, you would link up with a sponsor, right? So I'm just going to say BWR, we linked up with JP Morgan Chase, because they're in the financial sector. JP Morgan Chase says, okay, BWR, every time this ad is played 1,000 times, we'll pay you $50 for a pre-roll. And this is just hypothetical numbers, the $50. But it needs to be played every thousand times. That's what CPM means, cost per milli. So every time this ad is played 1,000 times, we'll pay you $50. So I just told y'all, we have an episode that done 14,000 listens, right? So do 14,000 times 50. 14,000 times 50, that's how much money we made off of that one ad. So that's one way that you can get paid through sponsorships, the CPM model. The next way is through affiliate marketing. Affiliate marketing is a great form to get paid too, but affiliate marketing it has a split side, right? So with affiliate marketing, if that product doesn't align with your brand well, you'll just be giving them free promo, right? And with the affiliate marketing they'll give you a special code or a special link. Anytime someone clicks this link and they sign up for a service or they purchase this product, you'll get paid 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever type of rate you decide to agree on. My brother Andre Hatchett, he has a course. It's $1,000 course. Honestly, I'm gonna give y'all our girl Terry Ijeoma. She has a trade and travel course. It's a $2,000 course. $2,000 course. She pays us 30% every time someone buys that from us. What's 30% of 2,000? We're getting kicked back like what, $600 every time someone pays that course. So you might be giving them free promo, but if you understand and it's a high converting item, you're able to make a lot of money, because now it's not tied to how many listeners that you have. It's tied to how many times someone purchases, how many times someone clicks this link. So now you're able to start increasing your revenue. Yes, 700 for 14,000 listeners. So then you can also sell your own products. Sometimes you just gotta cut out the middleman. Don't worry about a sponsor. A lot of times I see people, they're like, yo, I want to get sponsors for my podcast. Yo, I want a sponsor. But you don't understand the power of your audience. You don't understand why pay someone to advertise on your audience when you can monetize that audience yourself. You can create a product. You can create a digital product, or you can create a physical product. You can start you an e-commerce store, or you can do digital products, start selling courses, start selling digital ebooks, start selling PDFs of guides of showing people how they can start doing such and such, right? Like, it's crazy. And a lot of people want to sell, I want these sponsors. But once you understand how to monetize your own listenerships, you're able to start generating more money and start getting more of the pie, because they're paying you a fraction of what they're getting paid. So now once you understand how to monetize and start selling these products, getting these digital or physical products off, now you can start monetizing your podcast. A whole different ball game. You can sell merch. This is some of our merch right here. Renaissance Man, we sell this. We sell this on our page. We sell this on our podcast. Like, people buy our merch. Another thing is you can start a consultation business. Once again, like reverting back to the beginning, I said you'll become an industry expert, industry leader if you're providing value. So let's say you're a real estate person who's teaching people, this is how you can get started into real estate investing. We'll show you all the ins and outs of flipping, and you just start giving game about HVACs, and you start giving game about all of these other things that people don't understand actually goes into flipping real estate. Now you're giving you're becoming a credible source because you're giving them valuable information. Now you say, okay, book a consultation if you don't want to just listen to this. If you think that my value that you've been listening to week in, week out is enough, book a consultation with me. And I'm going to tell you, there's some people with consultation prices that are through the roof. Last year, we paid for a consultation that was $400. But off of paying those $400, we made $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 off of that $400 investment. So same thing. Someone pays you $400 for a consultation. Now you start able to monetize off your expertise. That's a whole nother stream of income. Lastly, I want people to understand and think about the podcasting industry. Like I said, this industry is still very young. This is like the Wild Wild West whenever the gold era was going around, right? I don't want everyone to be saying, yo, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to be the voice. Don't be the talent. Guess what? People are going to need services. We pay someone $70 to edit our podcast for 60 minutes. 60 minutes worth of content. Anything after that is additional price. $70 for 60 minutes worth of editing our content. You can become a podcast marketer. You can become a podcast manager. You can become a podcast editor. You can become a podcast engineer. There's so many more ways to get into podcasting rather than just being the person on the podcast. You might start the podcast and realize, I really hate putting this podcast out all the time. But I got really cool at this editing. I got really good at editing and I can do this. I don't mind editing and just sending it off to this. So now you can start a whole editing service. Or people need artwork for podcasts. People need websites for podcasts. You can start building straight podcast websites. It's so many services that are needed in this industry. A lot of people are looking at just becoming podcasters instead of starting podcast-based services. It's so much more money that you can get into this. It's $1 billion, right? You can get a slice of $1 billion any way. Either way. I hope y'all enjoying this. When I told y'all I was coming to give y'all some game, I told y'all I was coming to spit some fire. I hope y'all are enjoying this. If you getting value from this, drop them gems, drop the fire, drop the hearts, share this with anybody, cause I promise y'all it's up. And I just love what I do. I love this. I love to give away valuable information. I'm not with the fluff. I'm not with the bullshit with all of these people who teaching you online. This is how you make money online and just teaching you. No, I'm giving you actionable steps, shit that's actually going to change your life. So look, let's get into how we can get started. How we can get started into the podcasting. How we can get started into podcasting. Sorry, y'all. Let me get some water. So how you can get started into podcasting. First, you need to do your research. Someone asked earlier, how do I know which content? How do I know what's the right type of content for me? How do I know what I'm going to talk about? You need to start doing your research. You need to understand who's going to be the people that you're talking to. You need to understand what type of value are you bringing to their lives. How are you going to be making their lives better, right? And then you also want to start looking at who's your competition in this area, because you want to study the greats. You want to understand which category and which topics you're going to be talking about, right? You go study the people who's trending on the charts in these topics, in these areas. Go consume some of their podcasts. Go see what they're doing right. And then go see ways that you can improve whatever they're doing. Because success leaves clues. Success leaves patterns. And it's not copying. It's just you actually you're getting inspiration from what they're doing. I'm not telling you go jack they style, go jack they swag. We don't do all of that. But you can innovate off of what they're doing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just make the wheel better. So you want to do all of that research. You want to do everything, right? Then after that, you want to find you a great name. And people might be like, man, I don't know. I'm not the best person to come up with names. How do you find a great name, right? Whatever you're talking about, you want to use industry terms. You want to use terms that are synonymous to that industry. Terms that will actually be, when people hear this, they're aware. So I'm gonna say, maybe we got a podcast centered around baseball, right? We got a podcast centered around baseball, and we're gonna call it the Grand Slam Podcast, or Out in the Outfield Podcast, or the Bottom of the Ninth Podcast. Something that whenever they hear this podcast, they know, hey, this guy's talking about baseball. Let me go listen to this. So it's using industry terms, but it's also exactly what you're talking about. Ours is the Black Wealth Renaissance Podcast. We're talking about ways to build black wealth. We're talking about the renaissance that's going on. We're talking about ways to pass down money and to actually start getting your personal finances in order. You want to make sure that you use these industry terms in terms that actually correlate to what you're talking about. Don't have no podcast where you got a cooking show, but it's like some crazy name. Jalen's, we're going to call it Jalen's Late Night Patio. That has nothing to do with cooking. Like, that does not say, yo, we talking about a cooking show. That's nothing. That does not correlate. You want to make sure that whenever you're looking for that name, and use industry terms and it conveys what you're talking about. Next, you want to get your artwork created, right? You want to get your artwork created. You want to get artwork that matches the name. Your artwork needs to represent what you're talking about too, because a lot of times people are going to judge a book by its cover. People are going to look at your artwork first and say, yo, I don't know if I'm going to listen to this or not, because maybe your artwork is not high quality. Maybe once again, it does not convey the message properly, right? So you want to make sure that you get your artwork created and that your artwork is on brand and on point with the name that you have. After you've done your research, after you find your name, after you get your name, and one more thing with the name, whenever you're getting your name, come up with 10 names. Start testing it out on people. Start testing it out on family. Say it out loud. Start saying it to people and see what type of reactions they're going to give you. If someone's like, ooh, I like that. Like, ooh, that's catchy. Write it down. Put a check by it. And whatever gets the most checks or whatever gets the best reception, the best feedback, that's how you know, oh, this is a great name. But next you want to find, next you want to find a host that you can trust, right? After you've done all of these things, you want to find you a host that you can trust. And we currently use Anchor, but there are great hosts out there. There's Anchor, there's Podbean, Castos, not Squadcast. What's another one? I forgot. There's a whole list of them though. Like, it's a whole bunch of them. And how do you find a host that you can trust? One, you want to make sure that this host has been a while for a while. Sometimes there's new players in the industry. You know, they might pop up, but they don't have the funds to continue. So now you started a podcast and it's hosted on this site, but you know, they didn't have the funds to continue. Now this host goes out of business. So you want to find someone that's been in business, and then you also want to find a host that matches with what you're trying to do. Maybe you're just getting started and you don't have a lot of upfront capital. So you need a host that provides free services. Or you're a person that you have the money, you have whatever you can do, and now you know you can pay for the services. They give you a little bit better experience because you have the capital. You need to understand what this host can do for you. Then after that, you want to start understanding, you know, you want to write down all of the topics. Like I said, you want to write down at least 10 topics of things that you can talk about. Then you want to record 2 to 3 episodes. You want to record 2 to 3 episodes because this is going to help you whenever you launch. Whenever you launch, you can record an introduction and you can record 2 main episodes. The introduction can just be something like, hey, welcome to my new podcast. This is what we're going to be talking about, blah, 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 blah. that will build up anticipation for your show. And then whenever you actually launch, now you can have 2 episodes already ready for people, because if your content is really great, they're going to burn through your first episode, and now they're going to be looking for when is the next one going to be coming out. If you have 2 of them already ready for them, now they can listen to you back to back. And that also helps with your ranking whenever you launch and everything, because now you have 3 episodes. If you do the introduction, you have 3 episodes that has listenerships right off the bat whenever you launch. Right off the bat whenever you launch, you have 3 episodes that's starting to gain traction. So now you just putting in all type of work that's helping you gain traction over other podcasts that's just launching with 1 episode, or they launch with just an introduction. Then after that, you want to select your launch date. You want to make sure and solidify your launch date, because this is going to help with your marketing. This is going to help you put a timestamp on, this is whenever we're going to be getting started. This is whenever you can anticipate my podcast. You can share with your family, your friends, put it on social media. I know I said social media is not the best way to get listenership, but it is a great way to bring awareness to your podcast. So you're going to want to put it on social media. Get everyone to start sharing this date. Make it like a big premiere. Run promo. Say, this is when the podcast is going to be launched. You can get on blogs. You can do influencer marketing around your podcast. There's so many ways to where you can build up that anticipation for your launch date. A summary of today's live. Has anyone that's been in here from the beginning, can y'all tell me what is a podcast? What is the definition of a podcast that I gave? Let's see if we got some people that have been rocking with us from the beginning. Let's see if we got some people that have been rocking with us from the beginning. Can anybody answer that question? What is a podcast? Bam, nobody can answer. Bet. So, why should you start a podcast? Can anybody answer why you should start a podcast? A means to get the word out. Yes, sir. It's a way to build a brand through audio. You are correct. A podcast is an audio file that lives in an RSS feed. It's kind of sort of, but you onto it. A RSS feed is attached to your podcast, but you are correct. To inform, yes. It can help you present as an expo. To gain credibility, yes. What are some of the pros and cons of podcasting? Can anybody tell me what are some of the pros of podcasting? What are at least 2 pros that I mentioned of podcasting? To become an industry expert. Yes. Because it can be a powerful asset. Yes, that is correct. A podcast can be a powerful asset. Bet. What about some of the cons of podcasting? What are some of the cons that are associated with podcasting? Hey, appreciate y'all for tapping in. I love the engagement. I love the feedback. Easily consumable content is evergreen. Yes. Networking. Yes. Hey, I love that y'all tapped in. I love that y'all were receptive to this. I love that y'all are able to get something out of this. Getting reviews is hard, yes. Being consistent is hard, yes. And lastly, let's recap on some of the opportunities in podcasting. How much money is the podcasting industry expected to generate in 2021? Yeah, podcast content are trash. We did not say free content. does not mean you'll gain listeners. Correct. $1 billion is the amount of revenue that's supposed to come through the podcasting industry. Yes. What about how many people in the U.S.? What's the percentage of the U.S. population that listens to the podcast on a weekly basis? MRDM 100. No, my brother, you are incorrect. %. Yeah, 24%. 24%. Hey, I want to say thank y'all for joining today's live. I appreciate everyone for tapping in, tuning in for this full hour. Appreciate everyone. I know I said I will not be saving this live, but y'all participated very well, and I'm not even going to do that to y'all. So I'm going to save the live to where y'all can come back, listen to it, tap in. And I do want to let y'all know about the Podcasters Playbook. I have a course. It has about 5 hours worth of content, 5 hours worth of actionable steps where we actually get deep into podcasting equipment. We go into how to market your podcast, how to actually monetize your podcast. We go into how you can get started with your podcast. We go into all of these things. The course is a masterclass and it's taught by me. It is $297. But for everyone who stayed tapped into this live, like I said, you tapped into this live, I would give you this course for 50% off. Today only, 50% off. If you DM me the word IG Live, if you DM us the word IG Live, you will be able to get the Podcasters Playbook, the masterclass, for 50% off. Make sure you DM me the word IG Live to get that special promo code. That's the only way you're going to get that code is if you send me that DM. And as a special part of you signing up for this Podcasters Masterclass, like I said, I love to give value. I love to over-deliver. You will be put into a special drawing at the end of May to sign up for the Podcasters Playbook Starter Kit. And we'll be raffling off a Shure MD7 mic. That is a $300 microphone. You'll be getting a pair of headphones, and you'll also be getting a microphone arm. And that is like a $500 value. I'll be raffling it off. So anytime you purchase this course, you'll be entered into this raffle, and you'll be able to potentially win this Podcasters Playbook and the setup. So I just want to say thank you all for joining this live. And before I go, do y'all have any questions? Any questions for me regarding some of the information that I use? Do you have any questions before I get up out of here? I just want to say thank you to everyone who tapped in. Y'all, please sign up. It is not too late. I will be saving this live. So if you're just tapping in, I will be saving this live. But purchase the Podcasters Playbook Masterclass. When I tell y'all this course, if you want to learn how to get sponsorships, we talk about it in the Podcasters Playbook. We talk about it in the Podcasters Playbook. I am not a school teacher. I just love educating. I love giving out advantages. It depends. Like, you can do however long you want to for a podcast. I know some podcasts that's 3 hours long. I know some podcasts that's 10 minutes long. It depends on what you would like to do. Do you get paid for using podcasts? What do you mean, do you get paid for using podcasts? Once again, y'all sign up for the Podcasters Playbook. I'm giving it to y'all for half off. It is normally $297. You would get it for half off. Half off today. Appreciate y'all for signing up for this. But how should I consistently format my topics? What do you mean, how should you consistently format your topics? Make sure that your topics always fall in suit to what your podcast is actually talking about. Anytime you're recording a show, always have your outline. Sketch your outline of exactly what you would like to talk about on this current episode. And you can make you like 3 or 4 topics of, this is what I'm going to be talking about for this episode. Do your homework, do your research, prepare for a podcast. You want to actually prepare for your podcast. This isn't something that you just show up to and you just say, you know what, I'm going to record today. You want to actually make sure that you're prepared, show your listenership that you actually give a care about them and that you give a care about providing value to them. And then after that, come up with a list, and that's how you can just stay on track and stay on point for that episode, making sure that everything is relevant to whatever topic you're talking about. I hope that answers your question the best, Baton Rouge, Bo. Yep, $148 half off. $148 half off. Regularly $297. Regularly $297. So, and whenever you purchase this course, you get to talk to me. You can message us through the Podia system. Any questions that you have, we respond to us. Me and the team. So anything else like that, y'all, DM me the word IG Live. That's the only way you'll get this special promo code. DM me the word IG Live on the Black Author Renaissance page, and you'll be able to get the code half off. Yes, IG Live. Use the code. I'll put it and pin it. I'll pin it. Code IG Live for 50% off. DM us the code IG Live for 50% off. And like I said, y'all, we've been in this game for 2 years. We reached 1 million downloads. We went platinum. We reached the top 26. We're coming for number 1. We are gonna come for the number 1 podcaster spot. So that's on the way. But I'm credible. Like, I'm not just bullshitting y'all. This is some stuff that I truly love podcasting. So I wanted to put this course out and just help everybody else who I can, because I know the power and the weight behind this industry. I want to make sure that we're getting in. We're going to be early adopters. Yo, what's good, Sierra? What's good? How you living? How are you living? But yes, y'all, make sure you DM me the code IG Live for 50% off of the Podcasters Playbook. Anybody else, if y'all didn't get a chance to see this live from the beginning, I will be saving this. First Class Noob, I will be saving the live, and I do talk about why you should start a podcast, so you can go back and check that out. But appreciate you for tapping in. Until next time, this is Jalen signing out. Peace.